Reporting from Arkham Asylum, this is Mr. Rogues. In this video we spotlight forgotten supervillain Earthworm. Throughout the decades, countless vile knaves have reared the ugly mugs to pester our beloved superheroes. Some of these dastardly rogues have gone on to stand among the most infamous fictional villains in pop culture history, while others have completely vanished into obscurity. In this episode of Forgotten Supervillains, we spotlight Earthworm. Earthworm, real name Herbert Hynde, made his first appearance in a 5-part Huntress backup story published across Wonder Woman 309 to 313 in 1983. The story was written by Joey Cavalieri and penciled by Tim Burgard and Dan Spiegel. Taking place in the pre-crisis DC universe, it features the Earth 2 Huntress, Helena Wayne, daughter of Batman and Catwoman, not the later Huntress, Helena Bertinelli. Anyway, so in the story, Huntress discovers a baby trafficking ring in the Gotham City slum known as Avenue XX, a gang of crooks who sell babies to couples unable to have children of their own. Huntress then set out to track down their leader, a man called Herbie, but better known as Earthworm. This turns out to be a very bizarre fellow, a creepy freak who likes to hide out in the sewers. He only ever comes to the surface to conduct his business, buying babies from junkie couples needing a fix. He buys them cheap, and then sells them for a hefty sum of cash. Or rather, his partner does the selling, a crooked politician named Terry Marsh. While Herbie is in this racket for the money, he does seem to believe that he's actually doing these babies a favor, giving them a far better life than what they would have had growing up in Avenue XX with junkie parents. And he does kinda have a point, doesn't he? In the end, Huntress is able to track the worm down in his sewer hideout, but is attacked by various sewer creatures, like swarms of rats and giant alligators. Somehow Herbie is able to command these animals, although how is never explained. He may be a meta-human, or it might be a supernatural power. The guy does look like a zombie after all. While Huntress survived the feral attack, she does not manage to apprehend the villain. That's right, the story ends with Herbie slipping through a set of bars, another uncanny ability of his, and heading for freedom. Before he leaves though, he promises Helena that they'll meet again, and it seemed like the beginning of a beautiful rivalry. But that wasn't to be, as we never saw the Earthworm in a Huntress comic ever again. In fact, we didn't see the character in any comic for quite a while. He returned over a decade later in 1995 in issue 36 of Guy Gardner Warrior, of all places. This story is set during the Underworld Unleashed event, in which Earthworm received powers by the demon Neron in exchange for his soul, like so many other villains did at the time. Herbie can now change his body, kinda like a worm, and together with a few other powered-up villains, he attacked Guy Gardner's Warrior Bar. During the fight, Herb developed an interest in one of the female staff members, and chased her throughout the facility, until finally catching her. 2 issues later, Guy's warriors set out to rescue her from the worm's sewer lair. I guess she wasn't too important. In the end, Herbie was frozen by a cryogun and carried away to the authorities. That's the last we ever saw of the bizarre character. Naturally, he hasn't showed up outside comics. So, Earthworm, a really weird villain. We never get any explanation to his powers or his freaky appearance. I suspect though that if he had appeared more in Huntress comics in the 80s, we would have gotten something on the guy. Maybe. Who knows? In a way, he's actually creepier when we don't really know what's going on with him. Naturally, his baby selling racket is also very disturbing. Here's a guy who treats babies as things. Objects for sale. Just another meal ticket. What a despicable bastard. But in a way, he's actually doing a good deed by giving these kids a safe home and a future. Anyone stranded in Avenue XX ends up a miserable drug addict or gang member or worse. It's not a life you'd wish on anyone. So aren't these babies better off being bought by Earthworm and then sold off to loving parents? It's a bit of a complex issue. By stopping Herbie's operation, Huntress now doomed countless kids to a living hell. Of course, Herb wasn't exactly doing this out of the goodness of his heart. So we have an evil villain here, although one who's not without any layers. I highly recommend reading the Huntress story. It's a very gritty and creepy comic, almost a bit ahead of its time. As for the 90s Guy Gardner story, I don't even know what to think of it. It's nothing like the original story, and Herbie barely feels like the same character. He's given up on his babies, and now acts more like a generic supervillain. It's not terrible by any means, but certainly not a must-read. So there you have it, that is the story of Earthworm, one of the weirdest and freakiest villains in the DC universe. A shame we never got to meet the Ratcatcher, they certainly would have had a lot to talk about. So today is Halloween, and Spooktober is almost over, but not quite. I've got one more video coming to you guys later today, so keep an eye out for that. It's gonna be a truly messed up and disturbing villain, I promise you that. Anyway, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video, sooner than usual.